All right, well, pretty safe bet to say that we all knew that Joey Votto's retirement from Major League Baseball was probably going to be a little quirky, a little unplanned, and very much sort of in keeping with the character that Joey Votto had become as his career advanced. Of course, you know by now, last night, Joey Votto announced just before the first pitch of a game between the Jays and the Cincinnati Reds that he was retiring from baseball. A brief Instagram piece shot in the parking lot of Buffalo Stadium. Again, only Joey Votto was the first sign that Joey Votto was retiring from the game, followed by a couple of statements. And then, again, of course, Joey Votto being Joey Votto shows up unannounced at the Rogers Center to see off the Cincinnati Reds, the only, as it turns out, the only team whose uniform he will have worn in a regular season Major League game. Joey Votto ended up turning up at the Rogers Center to see the Reds. And they left, do a couple of interviews, and that's it. Joey Votto putting a ribbon on what is surely a Hall of Fame career. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I would think it's going to. I would be shocked if Joey Votto isn't a first ballot nominee. I mean, the numbers are just outrageous. The career numbers are outrageous. In some ways, I understand that Joey wanted to play in a Blue Jays uniform, play for his hometown, wearing a uniform that he cherished as a child. He grew up watching the Blue Jays, going to, living in Etobicoke, going to Richview Collegiate. I mean, all that stuff. He's very much a Toronto guy, very much a Canadian. So I get that there was some nice sort of synchronicity, if you want to call it that, to the idea that Joey Votto would end his career in a Blue Jays uniform playing in front of his hometown team. But I got to tell you, the baseball guy in me, I am much happier that I will think of Joey Votto as just a Cincinnati Red. And I'm not even getting into, Joey Votto's reasons for not doing this. He talked about it. He didn't think he was ready. His performance at AAA certainly didn't suggest it was ready. I think a lot of us thought when the Reds were in town for this 3-game series, especially once the Jays fell out of the playoff race, we thought, okay, this would be the opportunity to bring Joey Votto up, be a great story, let him go out, with a little bit of a splash. Certainly, wasn't going to have a detrimental impact on the Blue Jays or where their season is going, probably sell a few more tickets. But when Joey Votto wasn't called up for the Red series, I think a lot of us thought, okay, this is it. The Jays, again, aren't a contending team. They've got a lot of stuff they've got to do in September, a lot of guys they want to get a look at. Joey Votto didn't figure in their plans for next year. So I think this is probably the best decision for all concerned. And again, I know that immediately, of course, because Twitter and X, there's no point in exercising a little sober second thought about these things. You've got to react to everything right away because God knows the world won't continue to spin without Johnny 20 followers giving his thoughts about something. But of course, immediately the Jays, Ross Atkins did Joey Dirt and all this stuff. And I made the point yesterday on Blue Jays Talk that look, this was always going to be, to me, it was always going to be kind of a weird ending. I don't know what was in it for the Jays. I've never figured that out. I mean, good on them, I guess, for letting a Canadian legend rehab at their facilities and use their staff and all that, all of that stuff. Good in the Jays for doing that. I didn't see what the payoff was going to be. I know Kevin Barker, who will be back tomorrow, but I know Kevin Barker always wondered what's the payoff for Joey? What's he got to gain out of this? Maybe he wants to come back in 2025. We all know that it's hard for athletes to go out on their own term, or on their own terms, I should say. So this thing was always kind of it always kind of made sense, and it always kind of didn't make sense. Anyhow, from my point of view, when Joey Votto's name comes up, when he's eligible for the Hall of Fame, I will very, very happily put down an X beside Joey Votto on my Hall of Fame ballot in his first year of eligibility. And again, as a baseball guy, there's still something satisfying about somebody who plays their entire career in one jersey, especially the jersey of one of the game's oldest, maybe the oldest franchises. So that's where I think we are right now with Joey Votto. It's one of those things. I'm very happy. I don't think Joey Votto's reputation takes a hit here. None of that. I think as the season went on and we kept waiting to see when Joey Votto was going to get back from that ankle injury, rolling his ankle, stepping on a bat in the dugout at spring training. The longer it went on and the more there was no movement towards getting Joey Votto up here. I mean, I've got to tell you, there were never any rumors or anything. I mean, it got to the point where people weren't even asking John Schneider or Ross Atkins, when is Joey Votto coming up? And I think maybe if you're Joey Votto, I'm hoping this because he does have a sense of humor. He's a quirky guy. Maybe I wonder if Joey Votto didn't think, you know what, after all these games and all these years and all these pitches and all these at-bats, et cetera, if I'm going to roll my ankle stepping on a bat in a freaking dugout in a spring training game, maybe the baseball gods are kind of sending me a bit of a message here. Anyhow, as I said, it would have been nice to see Joey Votto in a Blue Jays uniform, but I am I guess as a baseball fan, I'm very content with the fact that Joey Votto will retire 17 years after playing 17 years, all in Cincinnati, 2,135 hits, 459 doubles, 356 homers, 1,144 RBIs, six-time All-Star, 2010 NL MVP award winner. He leads the Reds in wins above replacement. He's their all-time leader in walks. He ranks in the top 5. This is the Reds. This is the Reds, the big red machine. This is the team Frank Robinson played for, and Johnny Bench, and Pete Rose, and Barry Larkin, and Joe Morgan, and Tony Perez. So as a baseball fan, as a baseball guy, I think it's kind of cool, frankly. It's kind of cool that Joey Votto finished his career as a Red. And we don't need one of those, let's bring him back for a day and have him sign a contract so he can officially retire as a Red, which you see in a lot of sports. Don't have to do any of that. Joey Votto will officially retire as a member of the Cincinnati Reds. We've got a fun show ahead to celebrate Joey Votto. Devin Mesoraco is a catcher with the Reds from 2011 to 2018. Currently, he's the assistant coach with the University of Pittsburgh baseball team. In his bio, it's the only Twitter or X account that Joey Votto follows. It's in his bio. Devin Mesoraco got a shout-out from Joey Votto, as a matter of fact, yesterday in Joey Votto's thank you posting. And there's Devin Mesoraco had a very funny line about, as the only person on Twitter Joey Votto follows, I will be retweeting congratulations, he used the phrase, I think, to help fill up Joey's barren timeline. So there you go. And isn't that Joey Votto? Joey Votto on Twitter following one person, Devin Mesoraco. That's Joey Votto. That is Joey Votto in a nutshell. Danny Jansen. Speaking of catchers, Devin Mesoraco is a catcher. Danny Jansen will join us at 5 o'clock. Former Blue Jay, now with the Boston Red Sox. Of course, you know that on Monday, Danny Jansen has a chance to make history. He could go into the record book as the first MLB player to end up on a box score playing for both teams. He was the starting catcher, if you remember, for the Blue Jays on June 26th and was due to bat next before the game was stopped in the second inning. That game will be continued Monday, followed by a regularly scheduled game. Danny Jansen now with the Red Sox. I mean, unless it'd be nice. I understand Alex Cora's the goal right now is to keep the Red Sox in the playoff race. I get all that, but come on, if you're Alex Cora, you gotta start Joey Votto or Danny Jansen. You gotta have the same name in both teams of the box score. You just have to. Again, if you believe in things like baseball gods and karma and all that stuff, if you don't do that, you're just kind of not only you're going to bring about the wrath of Jason Stark, who has already written about this, and the damn thing hasn't even happened. And you know as well as I do that Jason Stark's going to be all over this if it does happen. So not only is Alex Cora, potentially facing the wrath of Jason Stark if he doesn't do this, he's also, I think, playing around with the baseball gods. And I'm not certain you really want to do that. So it'll be fun to catch up with Danny Jansen. Bad pun. And in point of fact, I'm going to blame my producer, Mark Boffel, for putting that in my head, because right here in my sheet it says catching up with Danny Jansen. Shame on you. You know, sometimes when you put stuff in my head, you know that it's going to come out. And then Ben Shulman, Blue Jays radio play-by-play voice, will join us at 5:30. There is a game tonight. The Jays, they lost last night to the Reds 11-7. They're 59-68. They are about 500 in this run of games against teams that I was going to say constitute the soft part of their schedule, but the Jays are kind of everybody else's soft part of the schedule right now. So I think you catch my drift. But anyhow, the Angels are in town for the first of 4 games. Great. We'll be able to see Kevin Pillar. Congratulations to Perry Manassian of the Angels, their general manager. He's got a contract extension today. Perry Manassian, of course, a former member of the Blue Jays front office. And if you need more sort of former Blue Jays news, the LA Dodgers today have DFA'd Jason Hayward as part of a series of roster moves they have to make. That means that Kevin Kiermaier has, for now at least, solidified his spot on the Dodgers as a bench player for the Dodgers as they get ready for the postseason. So there you go. There had been some thought that as the Dodgers got their injured players back, some thought that perhaps Kevin Kiermaier might be in jeopardy. But with all due respect to Jason Hayward, I mean, if I'm a team that wants to win a World Series, like, we know how freaky those games can get in the postseason. I really, really like the idea of having Kevin Kiermaier handy to run out in the outfield late in the game and to play defense for me. So that gets us caught up. Again, I'm sure we'll probably hear a little more. Hopefully, we'll at some point have a Joey Votto will do a sit down with somebody, and maybe allow people to kind of pick his brain a little more as to the reasons for the timing of his announcement. But again, we'll wait and see. And as all things Joey Votto, it will be revealed when Joey Votto wants it to be revealed at a time of his choosing and with a means of his choosing. Let's bring in Tony Gwynn Jr., the San Diego Padres radio analyst. Tony, thanks so much for joining us on Blair and Barker today. Barker's not here. He says hello. Before we start talking about the Padres and this terrific race in the West, and as someone who picked the Padres at the start of the year and said I thought people were sleeping on them, I'm feeling pretty good about that pick right now. Look, Tony Gwynn, your dad he was the toughest out he's the toughest out I've ever seen. Toughest out I've ever covered when I covered baseball. There's no doubt about that. You played the game as well. Just wondering how you look at Joey Votto's career. Now that he has made it official that he is retiring.
I mean, Joey in my opinion, had a fantastic career. I mean, he was one of the premier hitters in our league. At least, during my time playing, a little bit after my time playing, kind of reinvented himself, had that one monster year after when everybody felt like he was beyond his years. The best part about Joey is his curiosity, man. He was always trying to find ways to get better. I don't know if I told the story or if you've heard it before, but I remember getting on base a couple times when I was with the Dodgers. He was on first base, and me and Joey had kind of come up playing against one another. And so I got to first base. We did our pleasantries. And at the end, towards the end of the at-bat, or my stay at first base, he asked if he can get my dad's email. And so after the game, I sent it over, and I never really heard anything about it. And randomly during the offseason, my dad was like, Joey reached out and just had some questions about hitting and different things of that nature. And that's the kind of guy he was. He was always looking to kind of turn over whatever rocks he could to figure out how he could get better. I think he had a terrific year. Some would argue and say a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony, people do underestimate, don't they, the importance and the virtue of curiosity, sports in general, but particularly in a game like baseball where, so much of the stuff gets passed on by word of mouth, right? People do underestimate the importance of being curious, I think.
I don't think there's any question. I think that's in sports in general, in life in general, quite frankly. I think, especially in baseball, as we've moved more into the analytic phase of this game, I'm not sure that the pass on kind of part of this game is as strong as it once was. I mean, before you learned a lot of things through experience, and that experience was then passed on to the next set of guys. I think what happens is with analytics sometimes is that there's not necessarily a need to search in that way, in terms of finding things out, because the answers are kind of provided for you. You just have to kind of find a way to get to the answer. It's a much different game for the guys playing now, but Joey was a part of that same era where, you had to dig a little bit to find some answers, get the right answers that you were looking for in order to apply it to your own game.
So, Tony, shifting focus to the Padres, what's been the biggest difference this year from last year? If I could ask you to pinpoint one thing, obviously there's got to be more than one thing, but if there's one thing in particular that stands out to you, what would the difference be?
I think it's the attention to small details. You go back to that team last year, they had a high plus minus run differential, even though they were below 500 for most of that year. This year, they're around the same, but the attention to small details, being able to move runners, being able to get a bunt down, having an offense that just is multidimensional. They can do it with the long ball. They can string together hits. They can play small ball. And I just think it's those attention to the small details, base running, making sure you're getting the outs that you're supposed to. I think that kind of mindset started early and has really been, I think, like the perfect progression throughout the season. I think that's why you've seen this team start to play their best baseball as they hit the break into the second half.
It also seems as if the moves that A.J. Preller has made, it seems as if it's just from a distance, Tony. It seems as if the moves he has made it seems as if they fit seamlessly. to what this team wants to do.
They really have. And listen, that's not to say that AJ hasn't made moves that haven't worked out.
Sure.
But he's certainly, the one thing that at least I appreciate about him is he's not afraid to make the move. You know, so many times you see teams get close to a deal and then it doesn't go through. One side didn't feel comfortable. He is not afraid to make the move and let the chips fall where they may. And it has as it has been this year. It seems like almost every move he's made has paid off. You start with Juan Soto. Everybody was like, wow, how do you give up this guy? You're getting a bunch of young guys. He took those guys. I would say 3 of the 4 of the 5 have contributed and are contributing. He took one of those pieces, flipped it for Dylan Cease. He's been a huge part of this Padre pitching staff. And then the smaller pieces that you've seen, he brought back Jerickson Profar. He turned into an all-star. He signed Donovan Solano, David Peralta. These are vets that have been, I think, keys to the depth that the Padres have had this season. And then he had the wherewithal to call up Jackson Merrill at the age of 20 to start the season. And all he has done is put himself at the top of the Rookie of the Year list, in my opinion. So a lot of those moves, if not all of them this season, have seemingly worked out. That's not even going into the trade deadline moves where he pretty much gave this team one of the best bullpens in baseball.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The Jackson Merrill thing really intrigues me because, we've seen teams this year call up guys who are highly touted prospects. And, now, and it hasn't necessarily worked out. And now, of course, the topic of discussion is, okay, well, maybe pitching at AAA isn't, there's such a big difference between pitching at AAA and the majors that maybe hitters aren't getting enough in-game development when they get up to the majors. There's the challenge system, all this stuff going on. What explains his ability to not just keep his head above water as a rookie, but to flourish?
His maturity, I think, is where you have to start with. I mean, he's a 20-year-old kid, but you wouldn't know it by the way he conducts himself in the locker room and on the field. He has 20-year-old joy when he plays the game, but he's got 28-year-old kind of moxie about himself. And it's something that the veterans on this team picked up on really quickly. It's a lot like when Tatis came up and he had Hosmer and Machado in A.J. Preller's office saying, like, this guy needs to be on the team. It was virtually the same thing, except the names had changed. It was basically Machado and Tatis, likes of those guys, and Musgrove going in there and like, hey, this guy's got to be on the team. And I think Mike Shildt has done a terrific job kind of putting him in a spot to succeed. He wasn't asked to lead the team. He was just asked to be a guy. There are other vets on this team that have that star power that can shoulder that load, and he's just been allowed to learn the game and figure things out at a pace that I think was really just right for him, and he's flourished.
Last question before he lets you run. I know that Fernando Tatis Jr. was put in the 60-day IL, I believe, today or yesterday. That's simply a procedural move, I would presume. When do the Padres expect him back, and what are their expectations for him, do you think?
There's no timeline yet, but according to Toddy himself, he's getting close. We've started to see him more around the team. He's playing catch yesterday. I don't know that he's started sprinting yet, but it does sound like we're getting closer to that time. They don't have a time frame, and I would guess that when he does come back, the expectation is just to let him go like a wild bull at that point, because I think that's how he can have the most success. I don't think he's the type of guy that can come in, throttle it down, and you expect the same type of Fernando Tatis. I think he's going to be allowed to go out and do what he does once he's fully healthy.
Tony, really good of you to join us today. Thanks so much. You've been generous with your time as always. We greatly appreciate it, and be well, my friend. Thanks for this.
You do the same. Thank you.
Tony Gwynn Jr., Padres radio analyst. I would have loved to have known the context of that email exchange between Joey Votto and Tony Gwynn. Because as I, Barker and I talk about this all the time. Barry Bonds, best hitter I've ever seen. My own eyes. Tony Gwynn Jr., though, best pure hitter, toughest out. I mean, just, yeah, the ability to manipulate the bat against any pitcher, any style of pitcher, in any situation. It's pretty remarkable. And that would have been, I don't know if I guess you can't be a fly in the wall in an email exchange, but man, it would have been interesting to see what questions Joey Votto had of Tony Gwynn and what Tony Gwynn's answers were. And I really enjoyed hearing Tony Gwynn Jr. talk about Joey Votto's curiosity. That is something, I think it's a commodity that sometimes I think we don't give athletes enough credit, especially elite athletes who've had long careers. I don't think we understand how significant and how much of a role just plain old-fashioned curiosity has in a player's ability to improve and to last. It was a great story from Tony Gwynn Jr. Devin Mesoraco is a former Cincinnati Reds catcher. He's now an assistant coach at Pitt. The only person Joey Votto follows on Twitter or X, and a guy that Joey Votto shouted out. Joey Votto's the stuff he sent out last night after he'd made his little Instagram announcement, just the way he shouted out people. It was very Joey, very kind of inside, used some nicknames, obviously talking about events that were probably only known to those players. But Devin Mesoraco was one of the guys who got to get the shout out. He's going to join us next. Don't go anywhere. It's Blair and Barker. Blair only, but we still call it Blair and Barker on Sportsnet 590, The Fan and Sportsnet. 7:07 will be the first pitch tonight. The Jays opening a 4-game series against the Los Angeles Angels. The Jays lineup is out. Springer, Varsho, Guerrero, Horowitz, Kirk, Wagner, Clement, Loperfido, Jimenez. Ryan Burr will make the start tonight as the opener. Ryan Yarbrough will be expected to, I would presume, shoulder most of the workload. So that was a question that was left open by the Blue Jays after last night's game. They've got that doubleheader coming up in Boston. They are on a run of, 18 games in 17 days, so they're going to have to be doing some hocus-pocus with their starting pitching. So that explains Ryan Burr starting tonight, and Vladdy is DHing tonight after playing third base last night. So last night's Jays loss was clearly the second biggest story involving the Jays, and frankly involving the Cincinnati Reds, I think, in some ways as well. Joey Votto announced his retirement from the game, and it was kind of in vintage Joey Votto fashion. We've already talked about it at the start of the show, the Instagram shot from the parking lot in Buffalo, and then the drive up to Toronto so he could say goodbye to the Reds when they left the city, and do a couple of quick news conferences. And, as I said, it's kind of, I didn't know how it was going to end when Joey Votto joined the Blue Jays. But as I said, I'm quite frankly, it would have been nice to see him play at home, but I'm really happy that I can say that Joey Votto finished his career, that the only time I saw him play was in a Reds uniform. I want to bring in one of his former teammates, Devin Mesoraco, catcher with the Reds from 2011 to 2018, currently assistant coach with the University of Pittsburgh. Devin, thanks so much for joining us. It's great to see you. I got to ask you this about the only person that Joey Votto follows on Twitter and X. Has he told you why?
No, definitely not. Would you expect anything, right? Like, it's
No.
just that's Joey. There's some mystery there. So yeah, I don't know.
Hey, it was interesting reading his the captions he sent out last night as this came out, and he sent out some Instagram he sent out some Instagram messages and kind of you were mentioned in it and some other teammates were mentioned in it. And it was very kind of, eh, I probably meant more to a lot of you guys than it did the rest of us that were reading it and trying to figure out what the hell's he talking about here. Um, is Joey, is he as quirky and mysterious as a lot of us think that he is?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, for sure. Joey is he's his own person in every way, right? And I think that Joey will let you in a lot more now than maybe what he did initially. And but he still keeps to himself and does his own thing and gives you passes into like what his life is actually like. But yeah, to say that like exactly what Joey is doing with all of his free time, no, nobody knows that. Like he's doing his own thing and that's it.
How did that come about? I mean, and again, Joey being Joey probably maybe hasn't come out and said, I just decided all of a sudden I was going to do this. But, like I covered him earlier in his career. It could be hard to interview Joey. I mean, if Joey didn't want to talk, Joey wasn't going to talk. And then, a couple of years later, he's on social media. I mean, he's mic'd up in a game and he's freaking hilarious. And what do you think caused that or brought that on? Just
I think he just got comfortable in his own
Yeah.
skin. Like I think that as he established himself and in his career was obviously going very well, he just let more people in. And, it's great because you will never have a conversation with Joey that he's not completely invested in, right?
Mhm.
Like everything that whenever you do have time to sit down and talk to him, he is totally committed to whatever topic you want to talk about, your family, football quarterbacks. He will have as much knowledge as anybody on the subject. So it becomes a very good, intense conversation. And yeah, once you get in with Joey, it's a lot of fun, and you get to really learn about him and as much as he wants to, tell
Mhm.
people and let people know.
It's funny. We had Tony Gwynn Jr. on a couple of minutes ago, and he was telling a story about being at first base. And Joey said to him, how's it going? I said, hey, can I get your dad's email? Um, and Tony Gwynn said, fine. So he, gave him the email and didn't hear anything of it. And then Gwynn Jr. said, I got a call from my dad one day and said, you're not going to believe who just emailed me out of the blue. It was like Joey Votto, and he just wanted to talk. He just wanted to talk hitting. And Tony Jr.'s point was when I asked him to like what he first thought of, what word came to his mind when I asked him about Joey Votto. He said curiosity. Like he was always interested in stuff, and that seems to get to what you're saying, right? The focus, the interest in what you are doing at that time.
Whatever Joey spends time doing, he will become fully immersed in that,
Mhm.
right? Like if he wants to play chess, he'll become a really, really good chess player. We would play poker, and Joey maybe didn't know the game incredibly well. I don't know what his background was, but he never played one day, and then the next day shows up and he's the best player there. I think that anything that he would put time and invest in, he's going to do it very, very well and do it the right way and commit time to it. So, yeah, I think curious, I think he has like a incredibly strong will to be successful. I don't know what comes next for Joey, but I know that whatever it is, he will do very, very well at it. Right? Like,
Mhm.
I don't think if you told me that Joey's going to own the best restaurant in Toronto, like that would be no surprise. If you said he's going to be a big league manager or a big league GM, no surprise whatsoever. If he wants to be the best broadcaster, he could probably do that. Yeah, whatever he wants to do, like he'll will his way to do it successfully.
As a player, I mean, I would. Joe Posnanski, the terrific columnist, just wrote an article talking about like trying to boil down the greatness of Joey Votto, the player, and he focuses in on base percentage and Joey Votto's career on base percentage and how basically it's right up there with all the greats. As a former player, what made him so special as a hitter?
Yeah, I think it was the same thing, right? Just his will,
Mhm.
like Joey as someone who was facing Joey, he would never give you anything, right? Like, yeah, he's never going to swing at a ball. You're never going to get a rollover on the first pitch. This is when Joey was at his best, right?
Mhm.
I think as years passed, he had to do some things differently and take more chances at the plate, would be the way that he described it. But there was nothing that you could consistently beat him at. You know, like if you're beating him with the high fastball, he'll find a way to get on top of the high fastball. If you're throwing him changeups, he'll sit on a changeup and be able to hit it. There was just his will to beat you was better than anybody else. You know, like that's just what made him so successful. Is like he never gave anything away.
Was he the type of guy, because he was such an elite hitter? Devin, could you talk to him about hitting? And I'm going to say, with all due respect, could he talk to anybody at their level about hitting, or is he one of those guys that was just such a savant that it was just kind of pointless?
No, he could absolutely talk to whoever. I think that what made him so good was because of his knowledge of the game, and he could break things down.
Mhm.
Joey wasn't one to obsess about mechanics. Like a lot of guys like to talk about mechanics and swings, and he never thought about that. I think the way that he thought each day was, how am I going to approach this pitcher? We had a lot of conversations of, oh, this guy's pretty good, and he would say that rarely. They never like to give those guys credit. He would most of the times, this guy stinks. Like, I'm going to get him. If he throws me this, I'm going to homer it. Like those were what the conversations were like. But as far as like breaking down the intricacies of the game, Joey could do it as well as anybody. It just didn't have, he was so invested in his personal success at the time that, like, and this is not in a bad way, but he committed every waking moment that he could to being successful today for himself and for so he can help the team. And then when we would have team meetings, he would be just as invested in helping the other guys. But he wasn't going to sit around and break down mechanics and things of that nature. Joey liked to work. Joey liked to be committed to his craft, and he liked to show other people what it took to be, successful. So yeah, he's as knowledgeable about anybody about the game as anybody I've ever met.
Did this retirement come about the way you thought it would for him?
I thought it was perfect. Yeah, I thought it was great. I think that Joey belongs to be, and he said this so many times throughout his career, that he wants to be in one uniform only, right? And that was always his thing, and that was very important to him. And I think that the way that it went about, Joey did everything he possibly could to continue to play. Like a lot of people can go out on a high note. I think it's actually kind of fitting that Joey goes out the way that he did, just because, like, the game showed him he's got nothing left. Like, he didn't leave anything out there. He willed his way to do everything he possibly could. And yeah, I don't think he would have wanted the fanfare. His career was, he wanted to earn everything he got. So yeah, I thought it went out as good as it possibly could have.
And as a former player, I mean, like I said, as a guy who covered baseball since 1989 as a writer and as a broadcaster, I still like dudes retiring in one uniform. To me, that's really special. I've got to think, as a former ball player too, it's got to mean a lot.
It doesn't happen, like the fact that I'm sure it would have been cool for him to be. Yeah, I know that Toronto was a special place for him, and when he went there, there was very important, cool aspects that he had because of it being his hometown. But I think that he cherished a lot of being a Cincinnati Red. He cherished the city, the way that they've kind of rallied around him here, especially the last number of years. Yeah, I think that it's good.
Devin, we're going to let you run, man. Thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate your time. Best of luck.
No problem.
Take care. Devin Mesoraco, former catcher with the Cincinnati Reds, assistant baseball coach at Pitt. This was the article to which I was referring. Joe Posnanski, Hall of Fame writer, his blog today. Joey Votto has over 8,000 plate appearances and 7,252 official at-bats. You all know that. And when you look at his numbers, And as Joe says, probably the most, I mean, if you wanted to pick one simple hitting statistic to define greatness for a lot of us, on base percentage would probably be it, because what are you trying to do as a hitter? Well, obviously you're trying to hit a home run, trying to drive runs in if the situation presents itself. First and foremost, though, you're trying not to make an out. Everybody talks about what we have productive outs. Right? Pass the baton, right? So the thing you are trying to do is not make an out, because if you don't make an out, it increases the likelihood of your team being able to put together an inning. So, I mean, if we operate with that simple assumption, if we accept that simple number as meaning something that's important, Mays, Aaron, Pujols, Griffey, Wagner, Morgan, Schmidt, Gwynn, Frank Robinson, they didn't have 400 on-base percentages. Of the 29 players with 8,000 plate appearances and a 400 on-base percentage, 26 are in the Hall of Fame. The only 3 who are not: Barry Bonds. We don't need to say much more about that. Manny Ramirez, see above, Barry Bonds, and Joey Votto. And, you know, again, for me, he is a he's a first ballot. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, I would say that even if he wasn't born in Toronto. I'd say that if he was born in Bristol, Virginia. I guess I could tell the story. Joey Votto's curiosity kind of reminded me of something. I had our family went to Paris for Christmas a couple of years ago, and we took one of the tours we did. Pardon me. One of the tours we did was a tour of the Normandy beaches, the landing sites, the Canadian landing sites in the Second World War. And it was a bus tour. I don't know, it was like 150 euros bus tour with lunch. There was 3 of us. There was the guide, who was a history major at one of the universities in Paris, and there was another tourist. So there's 4 of us in this little van we're driving. And it was a great tour anyhow. And, you know, I said on social media at the time, if you're a Canadian, you owe it to yourself at some point to do one of these tours. You walk on foot. You get to walk on the landing beaches. You get to have an idea of the geography of Normandy, the landing sites, all of that stuff. Anyhow. So I started talking to the tour guide. And, you know, she was asking, as you do, what do you do for a living? Blah, blah, blah. She said, oh, that's interesting. She said, because I had a Canadian baseball player on our tour. I guess it was a couple of months before. She said, or probably the year before or something like that. Because this was December. So I said, oh, really? She said, yeah, Joey Votto. And I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting. And Joey Votto showed up for this tour, paid his whatever, $150. She said, he asked really, really good questions. And I've always kind of, it just kind of stuck with me. Again, not having had lengthy conversations with Joey. You know, as I was telling Devin Mesoraco the story about interviewing Joey back in the day could be laborious. And that's fine. You know, I've always judged, here's what I've always judged athletes. 1, how are you to the fans? 2, how are you to the teammates? You know, even when I was a member of the daily media, I really didn't give a rat's ass how a player was with me. And it'd be nice if they were great, but I'm more important. To me, it's more important what type of teammate you are and how you relate to fans. Those are the 2 most important things. The rest of us are just kind of, you know, we're like added value. But that hearing Tony Gwynn Jr. talk about the curiosity and hearing Devin Mesoraco talk about how Joey Votto was one of those people that when you are talking to them, they give you their uninterrupted attention. The ability to make you think that what you are talking about at that particular time is kind of the most important thing. The focus, it's important to keep focus on that. That curiosity really just kind of dovetailed with everything, that our tour guide told us about Joey Votto. Now, I realized that because last night in Blue Jays Talk, somebody asked me, did you have a personal story? Or not a personal story. What's your Joey Votto career highlight? And, here at the Rogers Center when he was with Team Canada, that was great. But, I mean, other than that, I didn't have anything really romantic to say, right? I mean, it's not like I had great conversations with Joey Votto. I'm sure Shai Davidi and Bob Elliott and some of the other guys who've covered baseball, certainly Bob Elliott, they've had way more in-depth conversations with him. So I wasn't able to kind of pull out that instant thing. But I thought about it this morning and just kind of went back and thought about that whole story of just, I can see Joey Votto with a backpack in a van with tourists asking questions about Normandy landing sites. It's just, it just makes absolutely perfect, absolutely perfect sense. So that was a great hour. Anytime you can talk to Tony Gwynn Jr. is great. Devin Mesoraco, again, the only person Joey Votto follows on Twitter and X. And I just thought it was so perfect that Devin Mesoraco doesn't know why he's the only person Joey Votto follows on Twitter. I mean, when we think of all the teammates Joey Votto's had, he doesn't have any idea why he's the only guy. And I also got the impression that he probably never really asked Joey, or if he did ask Joey probably just shrugged and went, Joey has his reasons. The Jays will start a 4-game series against the Los Angeles Angels tonight. It'll be a great opportunity to see Kevin Pillar with the Angels. Kevin Pillar is kind of announced his retirement, I guess, or suggested he's going to retire. But my God, the way he's playing this year, I think he's now vested. He's certainly going out. Leaving a good taste in everybody's mouth. We'll get to see Kevin Pillar tonight. Monday, the Jays go to Boston to start a series against the Boston Red Sox. And now the Jays are getting back into the part of the schedule where they are playing teams that are legitimate postseason contenders. I would think the intensity level would ratchet up a little bit. Danny Jansen, of course, was acquired by the Boston Red Sox from the Toronto Blue Jays. He has a chance to make history on Monday. There's 2 games on Monday. There's the regularly scheduled game, and there's a game starting at 2 o'clock, which is the continuation of a game that was stopped in the second inning. June 26th was when that game was played. Now, Danny Jansen started that game as the Blue Jays catcher, and he was due to bat when the game was called. So here's the thing. If Alex Cora wants to have a little bit of fun, he'll start Danny Jansen behind the plate in that game, or DH him or whatever. And that way Danny Jansen would go down in history as the first player to end up on a box score playing for both teams. Kind of cool. Danny Jansen's next. It's Blair and Barker. Sportsnet 590, The Fan, and Sportsnet. All right, we've got a little more than 2 hours to first pitch at the Rogers Center as the Jays are starting a 4-game series against the Los Angeles Angels. Barker, by the way, Kevin Barker will join us tomorrow. So we can call it Blair and Barker again without having to put the addendum on it. John Schneider will join us for his weekly hit tomorrow. And fingers crossed, we might end up getting Jake Bloss as well on to talk a little bit about his experience with the Blue Jays since joining the team after the MLB trade deadline. Well, speaking of the trade deadline, it wasn't actually at the trade deadline. It was just before the trade deadline. But our next guest was traded by the Toronto Blue Jays to the Boston Red Sox in exchange for 3 minor leaguers. He is Danny Jansen, now Red Sox catcher, formerly Blue Jays catcher. Of course, Danny, thanks so much for joining us today. It's great to catch up with you. We trust you're keeping well. Before we get to the trade and the Red Sox, now I think I was going to ask you about this because Jason Stark sat down with you to talk about the your chance at history, I guess, that with Monday's game against the Red Sox being the continuation of the game that you were in that was canceled on June 26th. If Alex Cora has any sense of baseball history, he's going to have you in the lineup so that we can look at a box score and say, hey, look, Danny Jansen played for 2 different teams in the same game. That hasn't happened before. Just got to ask you, have you mentioned that to Alex Cora? Has he suggested to you that he's aware of it? Did you tell Jason to go and make sure he knows? How do you view this?
I think Jason had said he was going to talk to her. I don't know, but I have not. I haven't talked to AC about it. I'm always just, whenever my name's in the lineup, I'll be ready and prepared. And I haven't spoke to him about it. But man, what an oddity, right? What a crazy thing for baseball, this game. So yeah, it's definitely people have been asking me and coming up to me and talking to me about it and stuff. So it's going to be a cool one.
Hey, have you had a chance to settle in now and get acclimated to everything in Boston and maybe sort of put that trade in a different light or something like that? Was it a surprise to you? What was your initial reaction, and how long did it take for you to kind of realize, okay, I'm a Red Sox?
Yeah, for sure. I think during the course of the season, I knew where I was at as far as this is last year of control and all that. So I didn't try to get too fixated on it, and I didn't try to look into things about like trade rumors and all that stuff. I thought that was going to really do nothing for me if it's going to kind of take my mind to that. So I just tried to control what I could. And, when it happened after the last game, I was shocked a little bit, a little bit shocked, but, that's part of the game. And, I've definitely, been settling in now. My family's with me. It's been great. We've settled in here in Boston, and, but yeah, it's definitely, one of those things where, I was with the organization for, 12 years and a little bit shocked. And I think that as soon as I kind of got with the team, with the Red Sox, and I was, able to meet everybody and kind of be like, all right, here's the next chapter. I think that's when it really started to hit me. And I was, been settling in every day since,
How different is that city, that clubhouse compared to Toronto? Just in terms of vibe, in terms of.
Yeah. I think, the vibe's great here. The guys are definitely very welcoming and loose clubhouse, and, everybody is preparing and professional, and everybody has a common goal. And, it was the same, I could say the same thing about, the guys in Toronto too. And, the preparation and the professionalism and, guys being loose but also, know that once the lights come on, it's go time. So, I would think that, yeah, it's similar in aspects where there's a lot of great dudes and guys that want to win, and they want to do whatever, they can to help the team win,
Have, when you joined the Red Sox, how much work did you have to put in right away on getting to know the pitchers? Because obviously you've been in this organization for so long. You were you were part of the furniture, and you were part of the institutional knowledge when it came to the pitching, right? And I guess what I'm kind of wondering about, you probably were aware of these guys from studying scouting reports as a Blue Jays hitter. Did you? Is it easy to take that knowledge and kind of marry it with the knowledge you're getting now that you're catching them? Like, does it give you a more complete picture of the pitcher, do you think? Or is there a thing where you looked at it and thought, wow, I mean, that's kind of that's not what we were told about this guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit of everything. I think that it definitely helps a little bit just, having some at bats off guys and knowing, kind of what the arsenal is. But it's been great, obviously being a catcher and communicating and working with these guys and trying to be on the same page is something that I, tried to do right off the bat, and, talking to Connor Wong, and he's been great, and Veritek and the whole staff has really helped with trying to get me on page. And it's just about, getting these guys comfortable and doing what they do and what makes them great and their strengths and how can I help. And it's all communication. So it definitely feels, first couple of games like a spring training feeling, right? Where it's just like, I mean, I may have hit a couple wrong buttons on the different pitch comm, and or, you know what I mean? Or I'm still getting, asking guys during their outings or after and during it before they come in, talking to some of the guys, like what exactly, what pitches are we exactly working with? And so, yeah, it was, a bit of a whirlwind at first, but it just comes down to reps and to communication. And that's something that, I love about the position. So, yes, still working on it. I think I caught everybody so far. So I can check that box of catching everybody now. So yeah, it's definitely a bit strange and has its challenges, but just communicating and the reps help.
I've got to think that having a guy like Jason Veritek on staff has to be a big asset too, because I mean, he's, I look at the Red Sox staffs that he caught. He had Pedro and all. I mean, he caught a bunch of different personalities, of guys with a bunch of different stuff, funky arm angles, all of that stuff. It's got to be almost like having an encyclopedia in the dugout in terms of catching.
Yeah, it is, and I've gone to him. It's been great working with Tech and picking his brain and just chatting with him before games about what he's done and even like as far as everything, mechanics, catching, different stances and thoughts for throwing and all these things, it's just nice to get his feedback, and he's kind of been there and done it with everything. So, it's great to work with him and it's been solid.
What's it like to take batting practice there? Stare out at the green monster every time you take a swing and playing home games, and it's there. Have you been able to make friends with it yet?
Trying. Yeah, it seems like one big target. One big target. So it's cool. Definitely being familiar with playing at the stadium, over the last couple of years and all, and so that helps. Being familiar with the ballpark and stuff. So yeah, trying to get a little bit more familiar with that wall for sure. But it's a nice target. Without giving away state secrets here, have you noticed a difference in how the Red Sox prepare their hitters for games versus how the Blue Jays prepare their hitters for games? Is there a different emphasis on something, different tone, different discussion? How would you compare the two? I think that, both sides comparable for sure. I think that, when I was with the Blue Jays, we were getting the information we need to go up there and be successful. And it was individualized to each guy's strengths perhaps. And, I think it's the same here too, the information about, kind of a team approach, what we're going to do. And it also gets individualized as well. So, the guys here are great and, trying to get you what you need, to go out there and be your best, and that's up and down the lineup.
So now that you have been traded once, what would you tell someone who gets traded at the deadline or in the middle of the year? If I could say, what are the three things you got to do when that happens? What would they be?
Oh man, the three things. I mean, I think that, you got to just understand that, you control what you can, right? Like you can't really control if it happens or not. And obviously going with an open mind and, it's a cool thing to be able to show new guys, what you can do and what you're about and how hard you can play. And I think that that's something, that's been told to me before. And it's cool to do that, to be able to, show guys how you can prepare and if you can play hard and do all those things. So, definitely a whirlwind for sure. And be ready for it to be a whirlwind for, I don't even know. I can't even say how long, it's, how long it takes to be comfortable and feel that way. But, yeah, it's just, it's all part of it. Right. And just go in an open mind and be ready to, show guys what you can do and prepare and give it your all.
Danny, listen, we really appreciate your time, or I appreciate your time today. Thanks so much. You're always great to the show. You're always great to Kevin and myself. We miss you, but we're still cheering for you. So be well, travel safely. Hopefully the family's doing well, and we'll touch base again. Thanks for doing this, as always.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's always great being on here.
Take care. It's Danny Jansen. Now the Boston Red Sox. That still seems really odd. He's hitting .254, 5 home runs. 933 OPS with 2 outs this season is Danny Jansen. He's been a terrific 2-out hitter this season. 13 games with Boston. He's hitting .257, 795 OPS. He's had a couple of home runs, 5 RBI, 6 walks, and just a few text exchanges I've had with Rob Bradford, folks who cover the Red Sox. Surprise, Danny Jansen's fit in perfectly, and it will be interesting to see him Monday, and if the Red Sox do somehow make the playoffs, I would imagine there'll be a ton of people in this city who will be cheering for Danny Jansen. And of course, Danny Jansen's move to the Red Sox, and again, it was probably not unexpected because he was going to be a free agent at the end of the year. He was in the last year of team control. I think it became obvious once the Jays kind of fell out of it that they were going to try to maximize some of their departing players. With Danny Jansen leaving, the focus has shifted squarely onto Alejandro Kirk. His workload has increased. Brian Servant is there as the backup catcher, but it's and I think if you look at Alejandro Kirk, at what he's done since Danny Jansen left, I mean, he's held up really well. Now it's August 22nd. There's still a lot of games to go, but this is going to be a great opportunity, I think, for the Blue Jays. I think they know what they have with Alejandro Kirk. I don't think anybody expects Alejandro Kirk to be a guy who's going to catch 150 games next year. I don't think anybody's going to catch 150 games next year. But I think this gives the Blue Jays an opportunity to see just how Alejandro Kirk handles a workload late in the season. He's had to in the past because, unfortunately for Danny Jansen has collected, we've talked about this, he's collected injuries along the way. But seeing Alejandro Kirk react to that, seeing how his defensive and offensive game holds up with the added emphasis that's coming from not having Danny Jansen around is it's one of the, if you add a Jays to-do list, or if you write down a list of things that the Jays are interested in seeing going into the offseason, that would have to be one of them. I don't think anybody's under the impression that the Jays are going to go into next year with Alejandro Kirk and Brian Servant as their catchers. I think everybody expects that there will be an upgrade at that position, whether it's via trade, for a younger sort of major league ready guy, a free agent, Elias Diaz or whoever. The free agent catching market's not great, but I think everybody expects that we will see some sort of a work sharing arrangement with Alejandro Kirk next year. And I don't know, maybe they talked to Danny Jansen about re-signing here. I mean, he left on good terms. If you know Danny Jansen, he doesn't burn any bridges. If you know Danny Jansen, you know how much this organization thought of him, and how much they how patient they were with him, going through the whole eye thing and all that. And it would have been easy, given the front office change, for an organization to punt on a guy, but they didn't do it. But anyhow, it'll be fun to see Danny on Monday. Odd to see him in a Red Sox uniform, but fun to see him on Monday. 7:07 is the first pitch tonight at the Rogers Center, the first of 4 games against the Angels. There has been a little bit of news in and around this game. We already mentioned that Ryan Burr will start the game for the Blue Jays tonight. Ryan Yarbrough will probably come in, I would imagine, as the bulk pitcher. There had been some thought that perhaps Jake Bloss might start this game. I would keep an eye on Monday, that doubleheader in Boston. I know Dan Shulman has suggested that Jake Bloss might be brought up as the extra guy for that game, which would certainly be intriguing to see him get a shot against the Red Sox. Perry Manassian, the Angels general manager, is just given a contract extension. He is, of course, a former member of the Blue Jays front office. When Alex Anthopoulos was here, we mentioned that Kevin Kiermaier appears to have retained his hold on a bench job with the Dodgers. The Dodgers DFAing Jason Hayward today as part of their moves. They've got injured players coming back, and much conjecture in L.A. as to which player would go to make room. And Kevin Kiermaier, again, of course, traded from the Blue Jays to the Dodgers. I expect him to be very much a part of their postseason roster. I just think he brings so much to the table, especially in that ballpark. He brings so much to the table that his defense is just way too valuable in the postseason. The other news, and we didn't really get a chance to talk about this, but according to various sources, Ken Rosenthal, Daniel Kramer of MLB.com, the Seattle Mariners who are on an off day today, are expected to fire Scott Service, their manager, Dan Wilson, who longtime Mariners catcher, currently a special assignment coordinator on the minor league side, has been tabbed to take over on on an interim basis until a permanent replacement is determined. And, this has not been a great year for the Blue Jays, obviously, but my goodness, what a year it's been for the Seattle Mariners. This is a team that on June 19th had a 10-game lead on top of the American League West. They've gone 20-32. That's a .385 winning percentage since then. It's the lowest in the majors other than the Chicago White Sox, who are on pace for, let's face it, one of the worst seasons in franchise history. The Mariners coming off a 1-8 road trip that has seen them fall five back of the Houston Astros. And, their chances of getting into the wild card are just marginally better than the Blue Jays. They're 7.5 games back of the wild card with the Red Sox and Rays in between. So there you go. The Mariners, who I guess when you look back at losses that have had a profound impact on the Toronto Blue Jays, that loss to the Seattle Mariners in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Remember the game where the Jays blew the lead and Bo Bichette and George Springer collided in the outfield, and Springer was carted off. It was just an awful meltdown at home. That loss to the Mariners, I think caused the Blue Jays, frankly, to overreact. It was from that point on that we started hearing about not the importance of defense, but the emphasis on run prevention. That kind of became the talking phrase, right? And that begat having Kevin Kiermaier and trading for Dalton Varsho, and essentially the Jays making a conscious effort, getting rid of Teoscar Hernandez and Lourdes Gurriel Jr., the Jays making a conscious effort to sacrifice offense for defense. And that, quite frankly, things haven't worked out since then. I've said often, I think the Jays overreacted to that loss. I think they underreacted. And when I say the Jays, I'm talking about front office. They overreacted to that loss, and I think they underreacted to this particular loss. But it is really interesting seeing the Mariners go through this, right? The year after the Blue Jays went through what they went through, both teams. And again, I'm not saying Teoscar Hernandez is going to the Hall of Fame, but we had Brett Boone on earlier this year. We were talking about what the hell's gone wrong with the Mariners. Julio Rodriguez. I mean, the Mariners starting pitching is electric. It's young. It's like, that's exactly, teams beg for that type of young, controllable, homegrown starting pitching. And Brett Boone's point was, well, they never really replaced Teoscar Hernandez, who of course is with the Dodgers now, and having a terrific year, won the home run derby and all that good stuff at the All-Star game. And to me, it's just kind of funny that here you have two franchises who have bid adieu to Teoscar Hernandez and then immediately gone in the dumper. And I don't know when Teoscar Hernandez is a free agent. I don't know how his agent, I don't know how you quantify that. I don't think you can. I don't think you can, put a monetary value on it. But man, if I was Teoscar's agent, I'd sure be telling teams next year, hey, you want to know what this guy's value is? Just take a look at what happened to the Mariners and the Blue Jays after he left. If you want to have an idea of how important he is and how important his bat is in the middle of the lineup. But I'll say this again. I very few times I have seen a team make a player move where I completely misread it. I mean, I thought, fine, they're trading Teoscar Hernandez. They're not going to re-sign him. We know what he's like defensively. You know what he's like in the base paths. Not surprised. Jay should be able to replace him. I'm sure they said the same thing in Seattle. Hey, not surprised. We should be able to replace him. And I think given a redo, I'd be willing to bet both of those teams would take Teoscar Hernandez back in a heartbeat. So there you are. Lots happening today. We mentioned the Blue Jays are playing the Los Angeles Angels. 7:07 is the first pitch. Ben Shulman will have the call of the game tonight. He'll join us next from the Rogers Center. It's Blair and Barker on Sportsnet 590, The Fan and Sportsnet. All right, welcome back to Blair and Barker. Barker will be alongside me again tomorrow. I guess the painting's gone well. The weather cooperated with the Barkers, so sounds like the homework assignment went well. So Kevin will be back tomorrow. The Blue Jays are opening a 4-game series against the Los Angeles Angels tonight at the Rogers Center. Springer, Varsho, Guerrero, Horwitz, Kirk, Wagner, Clement, Loperfido, Jimenez. That is your starting lineup. Guerrero is DHing. Ernie Clements at third. Ryan Burr will open for the Blue Jays. Let's bring in Ben Shulman, our Blue Jays radio voice on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Mr. Shulman, thank you very much for joining us today. Before we get to the Jays and talk about tonight's game, just want to ask you about Joey Votto, because obviously, look, your connection to the city, Dan's connection to the city, to Joey Votto, to baseball. Just some of your memories, your thoughts about Joey Votto now that he's announced that he's stepping away.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it is very clear that Joey Votto is one of the great Canadian players in the history of the game. I really think there's no doubt about that. And in terms of Canadian players that I've seen in my prime, or in their prime, I should say, really no match. I think that this is the best Canadian that I've watched the entire career of. And I kind of joked with LaRue a little bit early in the season. I used to watch a lot of NL Central baseball because Russell Martin would be on the Pirates, or you'd see John Axford close in for Milwaukee, and the constant would be Joey Votto, putting up another 28 to 35 homer season, leading the league in walks, 400 on base once again, and just continuing to produce. So, he was definitely someone to look up to. And really, I think, the leader of Canadian baseball over the last 10 to 15 years, really, at the major league level, with all due respect to the other great Canadian players that have played over the last couple decades. So it's a huge moment in Canadian baseball. I think that Joey Votto and the Toronto Blue Jays ended up having a little bit less collaboration than we thought they might when we first heard that he was signing that minor league deal. But in terms of Joey Votto and Canadian baseball fans, I think that plenty watched and enjoyed watching him for a long time. So, it's a time to celebrate his career, and one that I hope gets the justice of a pretty quick and swift induction into the Hall of Fame.
was the talk around the ballpark today about Joey Votto? Was there much with John and his pregame media availability, or even the players?
Not much. I think that to a certain extent, you could see this coming after it was clear that he wasn't going to play in this series. And I think, regardless of whether it was the fact that he didn't play against Cincinnati or just that it had been a couple weeks for him at AAA, I think that things were trending in this direction. So it's kind of a weird spot because he actually wasn't with the team all that much this year. A lot of the guys that are with the team that were with Buffalo would have been promoted before he got to Buffalo too. So there was time shared in spring training, but it's not like he, played out a lot of the season and then retired at this point. So, of course, a lot of respect in that clubhouse and with that coaching staff and everyone around the team for who Joey Votto is and what he's done in his career, but maybe a little bit different than when you hear a Kevin Kiermaier announcing that he's going to retire after the year, where there was a lot of, personal, I think, kind of feelings there with the guys who have played with him for the last couple seasons.
You surprised that Ryan Burr's getting the nod tonight to open the game?
I didn't really know who they would go with, to be honest. I wasn't totally shocked that you'd open for Yarbrough. They explained it a second ago. John Schneider just saying, hey, right at the top of that lineup, Ward and Neto, that's kind of, who you're looking at when you're preparing for this team, and it drops off a little bit after that. That's my words, not his. But, so I think if you can start Yarbrough against the back half of the lineup, as is, the whole point of the opener in a way, second time through, and you face these guys a little bit less. So I don't know that I saw it coming for Burr because it's not really a thing that he's done very often, but the Blue Jays don't have that many guys, as I look at who's in the pen right now, that have done this other than Yarbrough really that often. So they could have just traditionally started Yarbrough. They could have thrown Nance in there to start, but I think with Pop going 2 days in a row, you're not going to use Green there. Swanson having a tough outing yesterday. It might have just come down to who's available, who didn't pitch yesterday, and who's best equipped to give me 30 pitches today if you're John Schneider. And I think that's where you probably settle on Ryan Burr.
Do you think this opens the possibility for Jake Bloss to join the team in Boston? I
actually think this might hurt the possibility because I thought maybe he would be the 27th man for the doubleheader, kind of, pseudo doubleheader. But I think by doing this now, you can line up Barrios and Yariel Rodriguez for that doubleheader. So that might – I still think Jake Bloss gets up here and does pitch at some point, but I actually thought he would debut on Monday, and I don't think he'll debut on Monday anymore. Now I think it might be a situation where he is the pitcher they add when they get one more pitcher and one more player on the roster come September.
We focus so much on players who've been called up this year and what they may, and being given an opportunity to prove themselves and better their position for next year. And the guy that is kind of really, we've talked about Spencer Horowitz and Ernie Clement and all that. Leo Jimenez is really starting to intrigue me. And I know John Schneider's talked about playing him at second, giving him some third maybe, he said at some point. Is he playing himself into contention for a spot next year?
I think so. I think there's a real possibility. Now, he's got a lot of competition. When you talk about shortstop, if Bo Bichette is healthy and ready to go and in a Blue Jay uniform, he is going to be your shortstop. And I think you can pencil in Ernie Clement as being on the team next year. And so he's kind of your backup shortstop if Bo gets hurt or for the rare DH or off day. But I think that Leo's really started to hit recently. You like what he does defensively. I mean, he did make an error that was pretty surprising yesterday. But generally, you like what he does defensively, especially at short. And I think he's been good at second, too. So he's got to contend with, the Horowitzes of the world, Davis Schneider. He's got to contend with Will Wagner potentially at this point for time at second base. But he's an interesting guy. He's younger than a lot of the guys he's competing against right now. He's 23. A lot of them are 25, 26. And if he can be similar to them at 23, the general idea is that he might be better than them at 25 or 26. Doesn't always come true, but it's possible. So I think that he's someone they're definitely looking at, someone they've liked for a while now. And the big question is, could he hit enough? They definitely feel good about what he does defensively. And he's not only hitting well, he's hitting for a lot of power, which I don't even think they saw coming, and that's really intriguing.
What advances have you seen, and have the Jays seen Joey Loperfido make since acquiring him?
High fastball, I think, is getting better hitting that pitch. You know, a lot of high fastballs have been thrown to him, and I think he had a pretty big moment in Chicago when there was a pitch above the zone, actually. So a well-executed pitch from Imanaga that he turned on and hit out of the yard. And, I mean, that's left on left, throwing a pitch to the right spot, to your weak spot, and you find a way to hit it out of the park. That's really big. So I think that's one thing. You know, you're still looking to cut down on the strikeouts. You're still looking to shorten up probably with 2 strikes and be a little more cognizant of that breaking ball off the plate away, throwing sliders away or curveballs in the dirt. He's struggled a lot with breaking balls so far, but I think that you're starting to see him, you know, get to the high fastball at least, and probably just get a little more comfortable. I can't really imagine what this year has been like for Joey Loperfido. Incredibly exciting, but it's a big transition in your life to go to the majors and then to get traded 30 games into your major league career and play in Canada, frankly, for a lot of Americans is probably a huge life transition. So what I've seen over the last couple of days, I think, is a slightly more relaxed Joey Loperfido that, you know, is probably settling in a little bit, has an apartment now, understands Toronto a little bit more, and knows his teammates better, and so he can feel a bit more comfortable to go do what he does.
Yeah, it is. You know, it is funny when you go back, and I was just doing this the other day, just kind of rereading some of the, you know, the Astros blogs, the fan blogs, and you know, the stuff that was written at the start of the year in spring training. There really was a lot of drama around Joey Loperfido, and of course with the Astros in a position now where a lot of their, you know, they might be losing some guys to free agency. He was a pretty integral part of what this team was going to do. And it had to be a shock. It just had to be a shock to be traded because you've gone from being the guy. There's so much focus on you in spring training. So many people are talking about you, and all of a sudden you're in another city and with another team. It had to be a shock for a young guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge draft and develop team. They have created a lot of the talent on their own roster. And so I think you go there, and even with Tucker, McCormick, Myers, and Alvarez all taking up space in the outfield, I still think you probably think that you'll factor in at some point. I mean, they found a way for Jeremy Pena to factor in on the team when they had Carlos Correa before that. They found a way for Tucker and other guys to factor in when George Springer was on the team. You know, they often make the tougher move of getting rid of the veteran guy and betting on their young guys. Rarely do they actually trade a lot of their best prospects away for someone who's more veteran. So, yeah, I think he probably assumed that he had played 30 games of what could be 300, 400, 500 as an Astro at least, and ends up moving to a place very different than Houston, obviously, and for a lot of young American players is going to be a pretty interesting transition for them. But I think things are getting a little more normal now. You know, he's not hitting at the top third of the lineup, too. That probably takes a little bit of pressure off. Will Wagner, who he knows is up with the team now. So I think a lot of things are probably playing into him looking a little bit better recently.
Ben, we're going to let you run. Rest of the pipes. Appreciate you doing this. I'll see you down at the park.
Thank you so much. See you soon.
Ben Shulman. He'll have the call of the game tonight on Sportsnet 590 The Fan and Sportsnet. 7:07. First pitch. Ryan Burr getting the start for the Blue Jays, the opener. Ryan Yarborough will follow. And as Ben said, still need to figure out what exactly will happen in that doubleheader in Boston. It certainly does line up now for Barrios and Yariel Rodriguez to start those games. Again, we are in a prolonged stretch of games. The Jays do have some off days in September that will allow them to massage the workload of their starting pitchers, I guess. I guess would be the best way to put it. But for now, at least we'll wait and see. But I am with Ben. I do think we'll see Jake Bloss, the pitcher they acquired from the Astros. I do think we'll see him up here this year. And I you know, again, given the state of pitching in the Blue Jays minor league system, getting a read in this kid would be, going into the offseason, would be pretty good, because if he is at all capable of, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but this is one of the reasons they traded for him. If he is at all capable of taking a run at the major leagues out of spring training next year, you suddenly found yourself with some pitching depth that you did not have before the trade deadline. So you spent a lot of the show today talking about Joey Votto, the native of Etobicoke to Richview Collegiate. You know that he announced his retirement from the game last night. No real, I don't think, details yet about the nuts and bolts about how the decision was made. Did Joey Votto, in his own mind, have this 3-game series against the Reds marked down as kind of that would be the point at which he makes the call in his career? How much back and forth was there with the Blue Jays? I found it interesting that John Schneider, the manager of the Blue Jays, said last night he was unaware of the decision until getting it before the game. We're led to believe there was a fair amount of back and forth with Joey Votto and the Blue Jays. We're led to believe that Joey Votto was basically calling the ball here, right? It was basically his decision as to when he would, whether or not he would come up or whether or not he would shut it down. And I think, as I said, I think he made the right decision. Ultimately, we'll probably find out more of the details as this goes on. But Joey Votto did last night come up to the Rogers Center and got to the Rogers Center in time to say goodbye to the Reds, some of the players who'd been with him when he was last with the Reds. And he did a media availability, a scrum after the game. I've got to think that there will be a proper news conference, I would think, in Cincinnati with the Reds media, done upright, retirement, jersey raising, whatever. I've got to think that at some point there will be a much more detailed, organized, in-depth discussion of this whole situation on the part of Joey Votto. But for now, what we have is a scrum he did after last night's game, and we're going to play some of the audio. This is Joey Votto at the Rogers Center last night after the conclusion of the Reds-Jays game, talking to members of the media.
So I didn't know the Blue Jays side very well, aside from a lot of the staff. I got to know the minor league side really well, like way too well. But I say that tongue in cheek. They took such good care of me. I had a really great experience down there. The health and performance staff was great. The coaching staff at all the levels. It just made me feel like I was welcome from the get-go, and I was also listened to. Not that I speak much, but they just took great care of me. So to be able to come to the stadium, be able to say hello and catch up with some of my long time friends is really cool. I had to hustle in from Buffalo, and good thing I caught it. So yeah, I was intending on watching the game, but I had some car issues.
So you made the Instagram right in Buffalo, and then you hopped in a car to come here?
Yes. And I thought it was appropriate because it was my, I was not waxing and waning, but I had moments where I was, is this the right thing to do? And do I want the organization to tell me that I'm done? And I just decided, you've played long enough. You can interpret, what's going on. And I was awful. Down there. And the trend was not fast enough. And I didn't feel at any point in time like I was anywhere near Major League ready. And I can say to the very last pitch I was giving my very all, but there's an end for all athletes. Time is undefeated, as they say. And I can say with pride that I did the game. I did this baseball thing. I tried to do it with the what I was given, and using the guidance from the people have instructed me and the people I've played with in my competition. So I have zero regrets, and I'm not regretful, but I'm saddened, genuinely saddened. You know, I'm going to be a one team guy when, you know, it's all said and done. Now I'm going to be a Cincinnati Red, career Cincinnati Red. But I to the Reds fans, I wanted to play a year in Toronto at home in front of family, in front of my country, and it was one of those things where I to the Toronto fans, you know, I desperately wanted to participate in games here and to be able to, you know, I've got kids I still train at the same facility as when I was 13 years old. I've got kids coming up to me, are you going to play for the Jays this year? I'm on the street, same thing. I'm really saddened that I wasn't able to make it happen, that I wasn't able to arrive and perform at the Rogers Center in a Blue Jays uniform, representing the city that I grew up in, the country that I grew up in, and my people. And, you know, I'm saddened by that. But how am I going to show up and make it? You know, this isn't my organization. So how can I show up and make it my day, my moment? Here's an at-bat, here's a game, here's a stretch of time. To me, it's disrespectful to the game. I also think it's disrespectful to the paying fans that want to see a high-end performance, and I would have given them an awful performance. So truly, I can say that I tried my very best, and I just came up short. And I've had 22 years of not coming up short, so, you know, I guess I'm due. So
when did you make the final decision?
It was like a couple nights ago. I went over I had a lunch with my family, my mom and brothers and niece and nephew, and I was like, wow, this feels good. Like I've been I don't want to say isolated, I'm not going to be dramatic here, but I've been in a hotel room for 4 or 5 months with the ankle injury, with the minor league level stops, and I can exchange the time alone for good performance, but I wasn't performing well enough to be able to make that transaction.
That is Joey Votto, or was Joey Votto, speaking yesterday, last night. That's actually the first time I've heard that tape. And I'm pretty certain I haven't heard another ball player use the phrase waxed and waned to describe what they were going through as they thought about retirement. And I'm happy that I heard Joey Votto say that, because that is that I can absolutely see him. I can absolutely see him saying that. I thought that was pretty. I thought that was pretty conclusive, pretty explanatory. I do give Joey Votto. I give him a lot of credit in that. I think he realized that if he wasn't going to be able to perform to the best of his abilities, what was the point? It would have been different if the Blue Jays were out of the play or in the playoff race, you know, and maybe Joey Votto, maybe and he'd had a good run at AAA, and maybe he could come out and help the team. But I think on balance, Joey Votto just decided it's not worth it. He'll retire as a Red, and great for him. John Schneider, the manager of the Blue Jays, just completed his media availability. Let's hear what the skipper has to say about tonight's game.
Just that he started running yesterday down in Florida, and we'll kind of continue to ramp that up this week into the weekend. He's going to meet us in Boston on Monday or Tuesday and continue to kind of ramp up with us, and hopefully goes well and get on the rehab assignment.
Is there a target for when that rehab assignment could begin?
Maybe by next weekend, you know, I think, and just kind of see how he's feeling every single day that he is with us. That's kind of the goal of getting him around us again. So I think you're looking at late next week, around a week from now or the weekend. Hopefully he can get playing.
How does your pitching
Interesting. Yarbs will be a big part of it, I think. And after that, hopefully, he can get at least into the, you're looking at 5th, 6th inning, something like that. And it's kind of business as usual with everyone available, with the exception of maybe Zach, and kind of see where the game's at. But need some efficiency from Ryan and both Ryans, actually, to be honest with you.
With Richards, is it kind of nice to have a flexible to take on?
Yeah. I mean, it's always nice to have guys that throw multiple innings. Yarbs has been such a good piece to any bullpen or staff he's been on his whole career. We've seen him be really good against us while he was in Tampa. So really, doesn't overwhelm me with stuff. But I think having that presence is just really, really nice. And today's a big day for him.
Joey Votto caught us all off guard
yesterday.
Did he catch you off guard? How did you learn about it? What was your reaction?
Yeah, caught us off guard a little bit. Learned about it, actually, I think through AK, right as the game was starting. And got a little bit more info after the game. Haven't spoken to him. I know he was here last night on the Red side. But, caught us a little bit off guard. And definitely, unfortunate that he couldn't get up to us.
How much did you kind of get to know him when he was here in spring?
Being around him every day was I said it last night, it was a treat, for the time in spring training. He's obviously one of the best players of this generation and probable or borderline Hall of Famer, and a very unique personality. I was really looking forward to kind of seeing how he operates. He's kind of one of a kind when it comes to interacting with his teammates and staff, and really everyone that he kind of comes in touch with, whether it's a security guard, a clubhouse attendant, a chef. He just takes time to get to know everyone, and he's just a really, really unique guy.
Just kind of more globally, the way that he kind of became more appreciated throughout his career, did that reflect kind of like a turning point in how people thought about baseball? And then, like, a first baseman doesn't have to have 500 homers. It's kind of an appreciation for on base and the way he played.
Yeah, I think so. I think he kind of took his skill set and kind of ran with it, and evolved with the game. And, just listening to him last night, kind of understanding where he is physically right now and where the game is, I thought he did a tremendous job of that throughout his entire career. And just a ton of value in everything that he did. So really, really, I loved watching him play. I loved watching him interact with fans and kind of humanize the sport a little bit as well, which is really cool.
You guys said throughout the years, we kept asking you about it. It would be cool to have him around the
yeah.
with some of the young players you got left. Did it ever get close? Did you ever have conversations about maybe Joey could come up here soon?
Yeah, I mean, the injuries, it sucked for him this year, whether it was spring training or when he initially got up to Buffalo. I think that there was a time, again, he was driving a lot of the process, I think, and understanding how he felt physically and mentally. And, the hope, like I've been saying all along, the hope was to get him up here if everything worked out, and it just didn't work out, unfortunately.
So there you go. We'll leave the last word to John Schneider, manager of the Blue Jays. 7:07 is the first pitch tonight. I will see you in Blue Jays talk following the game. Barker's back tomorrow. Fan pre-games next. Enjoy the baseball.